So yeah, we can actually start off. Um, I guess people will stroll in, but I'm just glad to have Grace here with us on our Discord server. For those who don't know, this is a format we've tried a couple times. It is a format we want to experiment with a little more because we think it will allow interesting conversations to happen within membranes, so within our Discord group, within communities, to seed certain conversations which can be very relevant to those groups. So we think salons like these and using the Discord format might be a worthy format. So please bear with us if it's a little bumpy and we don't have things ironed out. Um, but I guess we will work it out along the way. And also, post conversation, please share your feedback with us if you think this is a good format, and if we should work on any things during the course of this conversation. Having said all that, I just want to welcome Grace here with us. Most of you know Grace through the introduction that we've offered in the event. Um, and I will let Grace possibly, yeah, maybe for you to share a few things as well. But I'll just say Grace and I have had exchanges for the last couple of years now, 2 years maybe.
Oh, I
Um,
think it's more than that. Time is flying, man.
yeah, yeah. Reputation infrastructure, reputation design, which can be quite a loaded topic. And for those of you who know Grace, you know it's, I think someone on Twitter described it as a no nonsense approach. So there's very little room for air sandwiches and fluff talk with Grace, which I am often accused of. So I'm really glad, like, Grace often pins me down and asks me exactly what I mean by something. And I think we will have a lot of that in today's conversation. So the point of today's conversation is to really get into um, what Grace aspires to do, which is build a community of some sort. What Neighborhoods aspires to do, which is building reputation infrastructure for communities. And so we'll try and get into more specifics of what Neighborhoods' infrastructure really is and how that can work for people. Um, Grace, you want to share a little bit about what just your background? I mean they've got the formal stuff through the event description, but I think it'd be nice for them to hear just a little bit from you.
So yeah, I'm Israeli. I'm living in Slovenia, and my background is I got very interested in new forms of democracy around the time of the Arab Spring. I thought, well, it's really good to overthrow a dictatorship, but I have nothing to recommend. You know, and so I got very interested in this idea of democracy and DAOs, and I got into the crypto space, and I've been in the crypto space for about 4 years now,
Mm,
kind of amazingly, which is like several decades in normal time, and like
mm,
dog years. Crypto years are like dog years. Every year is 7 years.
mm,
And I've worked with probably more than 200 different projects. I've written white papers, including some white papers for Holochain, some materials for their websites,
mm,
and so I've really taken a deep dive into a lot of what crypto had to offer. And one of the things that I started thinking about was what are the flows between people? I mean, Arthur obviously had a big influence on my thinking in that way, that it's not enough to think about what are the building blocks of a new democracy, but what are the flows?
mm,
And therefore, I ended up starting to think about currency, and
mm,
reputation just seems like a really important primitive.
mm.
It's the basis of it. It's like you don't even walk into a coffee shop if it looks a little shady. And that's a reputational aspect. But we
Yep.
almost don't notice it, but it influences all of our choices.
Mm, yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. Um, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Do you want to start us off with a little bit about what prompted this conversation?
Well,
What your background?
so what prompted this conversation? I would say there's a few things. One is, obviously, I really like everything you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been talking to you for a few years, and the white paper came out for neighborhoods, and I thought I still don't have a really clear picture about whether I could use this. So
Mm-hmm.
one thing is like, wow, could I shortcut what I'm doing by using this technology? and not have to build everything myself. That's always, like, ooh, let me look at my self-interest. Again, the first thing, like I said, it was your reputation. I like you, and I've had great conversations with you. So I started with your reputation. Like, I know Sid, and I know Holochain, and that's a really good place to start. It's like, I know Holochain. That's like a community, and the Holochain community has a certain reputation, and then inside of that, Sid has a reputation inside the Holochain community. And so I wasn't even just going by one, like an individual, but it was more like a community wrapped around an individual. And then you've got other people in this project, and Moritz had talked about it, and I know him, and it's like a bunch of different people who belong to the community give me a sense of what the community's reputation is. And it's not explicit, right? I don't have a digital footprint of that, but I'm really clear about how I feel about this community without any tokens, right? I don't have any you guys aren't displaying your reputation wallet to me in some kind of clear format. But every time I talk to you, you display your reputation to me. And you even started this with that. Like, I have a reputation for saying it like it is. and you have a reputation for being a gentleman. And everybody knows it.
I smile.
Without without us holding any wallet or points or whatever, everybody knows it. This is really interesting, right? How does our head think about reputation?
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Thank you for framing it. So Grace has a project she's been working on, and we thought it might be nice for her to share a little bit, like just a couple minutes about the project, from which we can go into what Neighborhoods infrastructure is about and what it enables. So why don't you share that?
So, good. So I'm going to just share, I think what I'm going to share is only one screenshot. But before I do that, I want to talk about the problem I'm trying to solve, because everything comes back from like, what's the problem you're trying to solve? It's not about the technology, it's what am I trying to solve? And the thing I'm trying to solve is the fabric between communities, rather than the individual fabric between people. And as I referred to, I have a certain reputation. The Holochain network has a certain reputation, and maybe my network, I don't really have one, but has a certain reputation. And if I go to the shop, I'm like, well, that chain of shops has a certain reputation, and that brand of soaps has a certain reputation. So I'm trying to solve this problem because as we can see, forming communities, it kind of works. I mean, we're having problems with it, but generally it's like, I know I belong to this community, whether it's a town or an eco-village or a brand or a company or a cooperative or an open source project. But how do we integrate between a number of those types of projects? Because if Holochain has an infrastructure, right, and somebody else has an energy grid, how can they interact? How can they interact in a sharing economy? How can they interact in a monetary combination? We know. But how do they interact? And then what if they said, well, let's add a farm, and then we've got our electricity, we've got our own internet, we've got our own food. We don't need anybody now, right? And if you could have that combination of Holochain, the infrastructure, and then a farm, well, you'd need a couple of a hacker community, right? Some people would have to do the programming, and then the electrical. You'd be like, okay, we're set. We can have a new economic system. I'm just going. So, what would those lines be between the communities? And one of the primitives, and the one we're talking about, is reputation. So rather than having an individual who could have a reputation, I want to say, all right, what would it look like for a community to have a reputation? And I'll just show you a profile page, which is, let's see, I think I have to click this go live button. Yep. Can you see that now? Yep. All right.
No,
so this is...
Yeah, give me a sec.
All right.
No, I can't.
You can see that.
For those who are new to Discord, you have to click the watch stream dial to view Grace's screen. Yep.
Oh, I'm so glad I have a stream. I feel like I could be like a really cool Twitch gamer now because I have a stream.
I would watch that stream, but yeah, it's another topic.
It's on Odyssey. So This is obviously not a real application. This is a beautiful mock-up made by an artist. And but it's based on a game that a bunch of us sat around. We had a design sprint, and during the design sprint for 2 days, we just played a game to see what would happen. And this is a community we made up, we invented. They're called the Old Stoners, and they're an eco-village, and they do ecological building and construction and repairs. And so that's what they are. And so, you know, it talks about their community, and there are these ratings. And the interesting thing about their reputation is that, okay, they have an overall reputation that is 5 stars, which I'm not sure that we're going to use stars. Because I'm getting some echo now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Someone needs to be muted. Give me a sec.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, should I just talk loudly over the person who needs muting?
No, it's fine.
All right.
I've muted them.
I don't know if you've muted them. Oh, that's good.
Yep.
No, maybe not.
Oh, it is. It's done.
They're definitely not muted as far as I'm concerned. But I can pretend.
Wait. Oh, maybe you have to mute them at your end. Oh, sorry. Why don't you... Oh. Sorry, give me a sec.
I stopped streaming in the meanwhile to try and figure out if it was me, but I think it isn't. All right, now it looks like we've got somebody muted. I will now select something and go live, and I guess maybe people will have to stream it again.
Yep.
Okay, so here we've got these ratings, and you can see that they're rated for different attributes. And in this system, what we recognized is that there were kind of 5 categories of attributes we wanted to rate people on, or communities on: ecological, cultural, social, professional, and communications. But underneath each one of them, there was subcategories. So it might be ecological water, ecological upcycling in this case, ecological soil, ecological. So there would be subcategories. And so that the idea is that everybody's reputation is made up, and you get to choose which qualities. Like, we had this great interaction. You know, they did let's see what they did for us. You know, they did some ecological building for us. They delivered, you know, whatever. They delivered some architectural drawings here, right? And they were great architectural drawings, and they were very ecological. They were very professional, and they were very helpful, right? The architectural drawings were for the, in this case, we played a game, was for the whole city, and they were really great, and they gave them for free to the municipality. Okay, maybe they had a self-interest, like they're going to get to do the building later, but they were very community-minded in providing these to the municipality without charging. So that's kind of the idea. How did the stream go? They're going to ask me that like right in the middle? Well, okay. Oh my goodness, it's asking me to rate all kinds of reputational things for Discord. Okay, sorry. Oh, as soon as I stopped the stream, it was like, let me ask you a survey right in the middle of your conference. Not the right time. Okay.
All right.
So the idea is that every interaction has outstanding qualities. Now, it might be outstandingly bad, like they were incredibly late in their delivery. But the outstanding qualities are their outstanding qualities, and we chose 5 categories of qualities, and then sub-qualities, and 1 to 10 ratings that in every interaction with the community, you would rate them. And the concept behind that is eventually there will be individual reputations. But conceptually, the idea is that if I know that when I go out and speak, people will know, so as you know, I worked for HoloChain for a while, for Holo, that when I speak, it's going to affect Holo's reputation. I'm going to act differently than if I know whatever it is, right? Like I'm going to represent some other organization, or I'm just an individualistic person. And so that's the idea, is that the community has a full reputation, and they can fix it. We sent you a plumber. The plumber was no good.
Mm.
We as a community are like, we're sorry, we're going to make up for it, we're going to send somebody else. And so as a community, we maintain a reputation. And the idea behind this also was, when I talked to these communities, was they said, well, with those guys, we're happy to have them send their children to our nursery school if they pay, because
Mm.
they're just a village. They're not an
Mm.
eco-village.
Mm.
But those guys are an eco-village. And we have a family type relationship with them, and they can send the kids to our nursery school.
Mm.
And, they'll pay it forward, whatever they owe us, or we owe them, or they'll pay it forward in the network. So the reputation, and we all know this, reputation gets you free things. Like, you can borrow my car, I know you're okay.
Mm.
You can stay on my couch, I know you're okay. I'll pay for dinner this time. I'll make dinner.
Mm.
So that's what I'm working on.
Cool. Thank you. Just a couple quick questions. Is this a community that lives together on a full-time basis, or are they like dispersed and share some kind of resource? No, they live together.
So what our initial design, and we're starting to interview communities about this. It's going to be in northern Spain, and it's going to include, as the initial conditions, both living together communities and cooperatives. Work on cooperatives. And theoretically, when we played the game, it could be anything, but you knew that about them. That was part of their cultural or social reputation. Their social reputation is, these people, if you live in that community, they provide for you. So let's say I'm a farm and I have too many pumpkins, which happens.
Yeah.
I would give that away, maybe to the community, but I would sell that, or not give it away. Right?
Yeah. Got it.
So some are and some aren't. It would be a combined thing.
And do you envision, like, oh, let me ask you this way, like, what is there a specific reason for formalizing your reputation system?
Yes. The purpose of the reputation system is to eliminate the use of exchange money, to reduce the need for exchange money,
Like monetary currencies.
And to increase the level of trust, the preference for me to work with you rather than buy it from somebody who's cheaper. So increase the sufficiency and the local ability to provide for the needs of the local people. So reduce my dependency on the existing economy.
Got it.
Because that's been a problem. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And so I think it might be nice to start out by actually laying down what Neighborhoods is not for. And Grace and I like chatted about this briefly just before, because we were like, oh, I don't think, like, maybe this isn't actually, like, Neighborhoods isn't for what Grace's project, what the way she's envisioning it. And that's actually great, because I think it brings out exactly what Neighborhoods is about. It also allows Grace to engage with whatever parts of Neighborhoods do work for her. So I would say Neighborhoods works for communities that want to formalize reputation and want to formalize reputation systems using distributed ledgers. So there's something worth clarifying here. Like, not every community needs formal reputation. So my group of 20 friends that I've known since childhood, like gone to kindergarten with, I think it'll be awful to start rating each other and having some kind of formalized system. So this is not about us, replacing some of those gift relationships that currently do exist and do thrive. We also think, like, formalized reputation has existed in the form of law, like legal systems, organizational systems, but we think they address certain situations, and don't work beyond certain contexts. And so what Neighborhoods infrastructure does work for is for communities that want to specifically leverage distributed ledgers like Holochain. Now, within the distributed ledger space, I would say we gravitated towards Holochain because it allows for contextual validation, and so reputation can be stored for remarkably lower costs, in contrast with larger blockchain based systems where today on an Ethereum network, if you'd like to store a like of some sort, it can be pretty expensive. So, sorry, I'm just. So, Holochain, we think, is collaboration centric, allows for networks and micro networks of people to get together and say, this is data that is important for us, and it's not going to cost us $15 to simply store a simple timestamp or a like, which you might end up paying on an Ethereum network. And that's because Holochain allows a network or a community to say, this is important to us, and we're the only ones validating this bit of information. So immediately, with Neighborhoods infrastructure, you get reputation data that can be stored at pretty low costs, which mean you're not only storing monetarily critical reputation data. For example, in the DeFi space or Ethereum space or layer 1 or 2 technologies, you're only storing information like defaults or transaction based records because they have a certain monetary equivalent or footprint. But I might want to store the number of likes that I've got for my meme, and that may not have a monetary value immediately. So, at the heart of every neighborhood is what's known as a reputation interchange. A reputation interchange consists of what's known as replang, which allows, and this is a language that we actually have have, have written and continue to write and continue to evolve, which allows easy computation of reputation to be done by a community within a community and passed and stored onto holochain ledgers. So you can actually say in within this community, we validate each other with likes or claps or upvotes, and the number, based on how many likes or claps or upvotes you receive, a record of that is stored in holochain ledgers. And let's say the algorithm for our feed is structured on the basis of that data entry that's passed in holochain. And so this is interesting for communities because you could be a group of 500 people or 500,000 or a few million, but when you're all hovered around a reputation interchange, you can be certain that the 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 formula for reputation that's being used by each community. Hello, Moritz. I'm not sure why you popped up on my screen, but the formula that's being used by that entire neighborhood is stored, is being validated by Holochain. So
Yeah.
if we do enter Grace's community and Grace says we validate everyone with claps, and this is what gets you to the top of everyone's feed or gets you the most discoverability or visibility within the community, Holochain basically ensures that Grace is speaking the truth. And so as you scale beyond that number of 500 into thousands or perhaps millions, it allows groups of people to play with each other while being certain that the way people are being discovered is intact and it is actually legitimate. So you don't actually need law or legal systems or organizational memos to ensure that this is being effected. And so it allows social groups to do things with each other without the requirement of an external overarching figure who enforces things. So within a group, what can be reputational data? Pretty much anything. And we're going at this with a pretty wide lens. And so you might see people use affirmations, which can be subjective, like likes or claps or upvotes and downvotes, which is my perception of how funny your meme might be. It could also be objective data, which is timestamps, transaction data, like the number of fulfillments you made or the number of promises you broke. And each community has the option of articulating with Replang exactly what the computation should be for their community. So you could order your algorithm on the basis of it. You could allow membrane entry and allowing people in or out of your community or within your community, different membranes on the basis of it. You could allow discoverability, like who you bump into within the community on the basis of it. The list is pretty endless. But what I'm trying to say is what you can consider to be reputation data is up to you. Anything can be reputational data. And again, because this is an agent-centric paradigm, this reputation data can actually port from one neighborhood to another. So if I think likes in Grace's community are important to me, I can actually port them into my community. So there's a whole conversation to be had about porting and how you do make, what kind of porting is wholesome and a good way to do it. In general, like you want to work with as.
But before we go there, can we just clarify a few about what you've said so far? I'm just going to slow that down. So great. I mean, like this is really interesting, right? So one of the reasons I really think Holochain is quite fit for what I'm doing is because these communities are exactly, the architecture of Holochain fits with this. Because you could imagine that this is a region, right? And the region is, we're close enough to like 3 hours drive within one another, right? So there's some ecological footprint issue here. If we're within 3 hours drive of one another, then we want to create some form of resiliency locally.
Okay.
And then you can have this values network, reputation, you can say it's a reputation network, and we'll talk a little bit in this, I'll ask a couple questions about this. And you can say, okay, rather than an individual as a whole on, I'm just using a community as a whole on, which I assume would work. It's just a question of how you set up the parameters, right? This community login is used by 3 people, and it's a community just instead of a person. That's okay. So rather than individual reputation, it's community reputation. And then what might happen, you could imagine, is like there's a bunch of anarchists there, and there's a bunch of people who are much more like social, ecological, we share everything people. And they live in the same region, and they have their own reputation, which is completely using the same system, let's say. But when I decide I'm looking for a pickling co-op because I need to pickle my things, I got too many cucumbers, man, or too many whatever it is, pumpkins. I can say, please draw for me the people with a better ecological footprint, or please draw for me the capitalists because they're going to pay me better, and please show those reputational cards to me first, because those are my values. And the system doesn't impose reputational values. It just says on these 50, parameters, rate each other, and you do business with whoever matches your values. You do business with them. We're not going to tell you what values you should have. We're just going to allow you. And it might be like, I don't want to negotiate with people who are really good negotiators because they're too good at that, right? So that's what I wanted. So you were saying prioritize, like in terms of, but it is exactly that. I want to prioritize doing business with, I could say, the proximity to me, or that they share my values. And that
could also be something as simple as like a track record of like following through on your promises. Something as like you don't want somebody flaking on you, like something of that sort. There's actually 3 reputational aspects. And you touched on one. One is like, did they keep their promise? And did the thing I got, was it a great thing? Right? So let's say we decided, you could say there's 2 basic kinds of interactions. One might be, I either give or sell you something, right? Or trade with you, right? Pumpkins, I give you pumpkins, you lend me your truck, it's all good, right? And that's one-to-one interaction. Another might be, I'm going to have a potluck dinner at my place and invite everybody. Or a beach cleanup. So I'm initiating something and you're participating in it. In both of those cases, there's going to be, wow, it was a great potluck. Right? So the product was great, but was I a good organizer? That's a totally different thing. Like the reputation of my community as the potluck organizers would be like, you know what? They sent out the posters really late. And they didn't quite have enough forks to go around, and but they were really nice. They were so friendly and welcoming, and they used all plastic, so they're not very ecological. But the product itself, the potluck, it was a great potluck.
So there's a complete difference between how I rate the product,
Mm.
delivered on time
Mm.
and the product I wanted, and
Mm.
how I rate the community on those values.
Mm.
Man, they served it all in plastic. Like, I
Mm.
don't know, we don't want
Mm.
them to be using all that plastic.
Mm. Got it.
And then the third element, so those were two things. The third element was fairness. And
Fairness.
we had a lot of discussions about what that means.
Mm.
And the reason that we cared about fairness, and I think every reputational system cares about that, is that's the proxy for trust. Is like,
Mm.
there's one thing which is, would I trust them to be ecological, right? Would I trust them with my money? But then the other one is, do I feel good about them?
Mm.
Like when we did this interaction, did it, and we kind of came down to coolness. Like, did it feel cool, or is there something uncool about it? Because let's say, I called you up and I'm like, Sid, I want some mentoring, and you gave me
Mm.
some mentoring.
Mm.
I would receive more than I gave,
Mm.
and we would both feel it was fair. That was
Mm.
cool.
Mm. Mm.
It was cool.
Mm.
I got more than I gave, and you gave more than you got, and that was cool,
Mm. Do
right?
we? Yeah. I wonder if we could spend the next, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes talking more about the relevance of neighborhoods infrastructure for a project like this,
Yeah.
um,
So, yeah,
and then get more into currency design. And at this point, I feel like we've got a few people. If someone does have a question or a comment, just unmute yourself and go for it, and we'll take it from there. But yeah, I think like diving into the relevance of neighborhoods infrastructure would be useful.
yeah,
So to start that conversation, I'll say like I think it's clear like for a project like yours, you want to use something like Holochain so that the governance of it is founded in distributed tech and doesn't need that
correct.
overarching system to enforce things. I guess neighborhoods infrastructure becomes relevant for you for I can think of a couple reasons. Um, you you number one, you probably don't want to architect your reputation system in Holochain yourself, so you can actually do it through Replang, through potentially a front end that will allow you to easily articulate culture on the fly. And that's really important because I'm pretty sure you don't know on day one what your culture should be. So you're probably going to run through like many rapid iterations of what your community's reputation system will look like. So you mentioned three aspects that are important to you, but I'm pretty sure like every week you're going to keep tweaking it because it's not going to work.
This is
And so
accurate.
neighborhoods infrastructure allows you to tweak it using Replang without actually releasing whole new holochain apps every time, because that can be really painful on on um, on holochain in like distributed apps, because you literally have to send out updates to everyone in the network. And so it's what we call like computations on the fly. So neighborhoods infrastructure would actually allow you to do that pretty easily. And so it is, I would say, designed for community activators. That's what we're calling them. People who can't, don't want to code and don't have necessarily fundraising skills to put together a couple $100,000 to put together an app and go down, the traditional app funded module. So you ideally could architect your culture using, Replang. But the second piece that Neighborhoods' marketplace helps solve is finding tools that allows people in your communities to discover each other. And so the point of the marketplace is to generate for you generic tools. We use the word generic tools because these tools won't impose on you their cultural aspirations. So, for example, Discord or Facebook imposes upon us their rules, which is we want a certain amount of monetization, or we have certain set of community guidelines, and so you can't meet people in this way, or you will only see this order in your feed. And so potentially you might have I don't know, a dating app. This topic seems to be coming up in most conversations we have. Like, you might want a dating app tool within your community. And so a dating tool
So
which
it's not dating. So right, like it's very
meeting.
clear. Like yeah, with this thing, it's like I need some food, right?
Yeah,
I'm
or
dating
let's
somebody,
let's
right? Like
let's
I
dial it
need
down.
food.
Let's
Let's
say
yeah.
you might
Yeah.
want to allow for serendipitous coffees or bump-ins to each other, different people within the
Yep.
community. Yep. And so the problem we have with current apps or tools that are out there or platforms is they tend to impose their algorithms in terms of who you should meet and who you shouldn't. But a community
Yeah.
like yours has a very strong sense of, hey, we actually want to create these metrics which will allow these people to meet. So the neighborhoods marketplace allows for generic tools to be accessed by people such as yourself. um, and we call it a marketplace, but it's not really a marketplace because in distributed networks it's actually just ways of discovering tools and ways of sharing costs with other communities that are using the same tools. But what you will get as a community activator is that tool, that little app, that little plugin in your community isn't imposing itself on you. It's actually just serving its purpose, which is basic UI and basic engine to allow people to talk to each other. It might be chat, it might be a feed style, or maybe a Reddit style clone.
Yep.
So you get to layer your culture on those tools, and I think that's really important for communities because we've never had that gift. So
Okay.
I think it's two things.
So
It's allowing reputation to be designed and articulated easily, and two, finding tools that allow your culture to thrive over these tools rather than the other way around.
so let me ask you a couple of specific
Yeah.
questions. So when you say letting reputation be articulated,
Mm.
so one articulation of reputation in my system is there are 50 attributes,
Mm-hmm.
and I can rate each community 1 to 10
Mm-hmm.
and on the attributes, and
Mm-hmm.
then that community will display an average. You can't have accumulated points like it's always going up.
Mm.
But in mine, it's an average, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your
Mm.
reputation is
Mm.
1 to 10.
Yeah.
So is that a format we could use?
It it sounds. I mean, from what I think I understood the way you explained it, that's just like a mathematical formula
Yeah.
that you're using,
Hmm.
and yeah, absolutely. So that mathematical formula is up to you. Like if you'd like to include some kind of perishability into it, that's your choice, and you
Okay.
decide as the community activator whether there should be perishability. Like, maybe you were ecologically friendly 5 years ago. Is that still relevant today? And you decide that. So
Mm.
what neighborhoods will eventually also enable are cultural templates. So you can get going from some kind of libraries that will be available, that will be created by
Right.
the community to get you going. But if you have very specific opinions on what that needs to be, like, that's the point. Like, you actually can articulate your culture very specifically. um,
Okay.
and
So
and and
now
and I
about
think that isn't as important when it's like a group of 50 people sharing memes. But as that starts going into like 500,000 or 550,000, or let's say maybe your community is 500 people, but you might actually be allied with 500 other communities who rely on your reputation data. Like, maybe I'm part of a similar community in Asia and I'm traveling to Spain and I want to leverage Grace's community's data to meet people for coffees. I need to have so much faith in the fact that you articulated your culture so specifically that I can rely on that reputation data. And so what we're trying to say is, it's not just, oh, you need to be like a 50,000 or 5 million strong group for this to be relevant. Like, you could be a small group, but if your reputation data is ported into hundreds or thousands of other communities, it becomes equally powerful.
yep.
Yeah.
And it's true. Like you can see that these communities operate in a network of a few hundred villages
Mm.
in Europe, and they
Mm.
kind of know about each other and they
Yeah.
ask,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the next question is about the marketplaces because that's very interesting to me,
Mm.
right? It's
Mm.
not a dating app. It's very interesting. Like your examples are really interesting, and they map exactly onto what we want to do.
Mm. Mm.
So you might be from an eco-village in India,
Hmm.
and you might be traveling in the area, and you
Yeah.
want some place to stay, and you want to know that they're eco, and they want to know you're a good guest, and that you come from an eco-village that has a good reputation as decent.
Yeah.
Now, if they find out your eco-village has a good reputation as decent, you can stay for free. And if they find out your eco-village has like a reputation, they might say, well, it's $100 a night.
Yeah.
And it's fine, right? Like
Yeah.
both,
Yeah.
so we could share our reputation data, and what that means is that even though you're an eco-village far over there, and you're coming here to bring whatever it is, maybe you make incense or whatever,
Yeah.
we can check your reputation and say, yeah, you are somebody who belongs to our value system based on your reputational interaction. And that's really the whole point of this, is how do we create these resilient, and you can see these are economic networks. I'm not talking about having coffee. I'm talking about trading with you.
Yeah, I'm keeping
based
it,
on
I'm
knowing
keeping it
you
really,
belong.
I'm keeping it very close to the ground because it's just easier to understand. Like, I feel safer suggesting those kind of moves first rather than go spend a night in someone's house,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so you and I are addressing that problem of safety very differently, right?
Yeah.
I'm addressing it by saying, I'm going to start with 30 eco-villages, and they all know each other, and they're in the same region, and we're going to experiment with this.
Yeah.
And the default is you can't do an interaction digitally. There's no way I can pick up your pumpkins and lend you my truck without having had a phone call, right? So I'm saying this is an alpha system, guys. We're not sure it's going to work. We all have to trust in it, and then we have to kind of know each other at the beginning because we're testing a new economy. The future looks so. You're dealing with it by saying, "Hey, only use this for your memes," and I'm dealing with it by saying, "At the beginning, we're a closed network." And then,
I'm not coming at it as a prescriptive response. Like, I'm not saying we should only use it for memes. I think it's easier to do it with memes. And it, like you said, it's less risk. I think even for the kind of use cases you're suggesting, we've spoken about it before, like staying away from the very nebulous, is Grace a nice person or not? But instead keeping it down to super micro certifications, like these are the transactions Grace did, these are the timestamps that suggest, she delivered something on time or not. And therefore this is our computation for punctuality, like maybe we use a spectrum or something of that sort. Like, micro certifications go a long way in with this infrastructure. And as stuff grows, like, I think people will be able to do more complex nebulous stuff with this technology. But yeah, I think
I mean, I think you and I,
like, as humans, I think we're good with like smaller relationships to be like, hey Grace, is that person a nice guy? Like, should I meet them when I'm in his town? Like, I think that works, but I think at much larger scales we're better off with micro certifications. And this is I'm so defensive about it because we've in so many interactions we are always getting flack for trying to like, what kind of world will we live in if we just go around rating each other as nice or bad or trustworthy or not? And I think that's not what this is about. Like, this is enabling like these micro certifications which allow larger groups to do specific kind of things with each other. Sorry.
Well, this is where you and I really differ, Aaron, because what I'm trying to do is replicate what we're doing. Right? Like, because if people say, what would we do if we lived in a world where everybody judged everybody? It's like, hello, right? Isn't everybody in this room, and they're all, you can't even see them, like they've got their microphones off and their cameras off, and they're making judgments of me right now, all those people. And if this is recorded and uploaded, it's like, we do it, right? We live in that world. And what I'm trying to say is, what if we digitize that in a reasonable way, and also in a way that I get to decide what data I expose? Just like, I'm not talking to you like I talk to my children, because I'm not.
Fair point.
So I get to expose this aspect of my personality to you, right? But not that aspect of my personality, right? And so, and I don't have to expose to you my shopping habits right now, or my ecological footprint. But
Yeah.
so that I get to have, that's also the other thing I really love about the holochain ecosystem is I've got my chain with myself and in my trusted neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have to expose my chain unless you ask me permission to expose
Mm-hmm.
my chain.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's a default self-sovereign identity structure that really goes very well with what we're trying
Mm.
to do.
Yeah.
And so that's what I like about it. I do want to ask you a little bit more about this marketplaces because, of course, that's
Yeah.
what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Marketplaces.
Why don't let's get into the marketplace for a bit, and as and if anyone has any questions, I'm not sure if there's a feature to raise hands, so I think just unmute yourselves and jump in once we wrap up some of the marketplace discussion. So yeah, marketplace. What did you have in
Hmm.
mind?
So one of the things that I've noticed that people talk about when they're talking about the kind of problem I'm talking about is like, how do we get our eco-village network
Hmm.
to support one another economically? It's like we're
Hmm.
going to have and wants and needs, whatever you want to call
Hmm.
that, marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll post all the stuff we can provide, and you post all the stuff you can provide, and then we'll find each other.
Hmm.
And so that's a marketplace. That's
Hmm.
exactly what you're saying. And
Hmm.
it could be, look, we've got so many, we have a truck, we use it all week, but we don't use it on the weekend.
Hmm. Hmm.
And, come use it. Or we've got we've grown all these fruits and vegetables and we need a place to store them
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
winter. Pickling would be fine, drying would be fine,
Yeah.
making them into pumpkin pie, right? We're looking for
Yeah.
and so that's a marketplace request. And the thing that, and like I said, I want to know a number of things, and I want to be able to filter. I want to say, is it close to me? Is it ecological? Is it a cooperative where they
Hmm.
share things? Is
Hmm.
it, are they employing handicapped people? Whatever it
Hmm.
is, right? Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
I want to say, these are my top values, and
Hmm.
can you prioritize my potential business partners based on those values in the marketplace that you're
Hmm.
going to show me in my feed? Because that's exactly what you said. I don't want Facebook to decide or
Yeah.
Amazon to decide what
Yeah.
business partner to suggest to me. I
Yeah.
want a flexible marketplace, like you're saying, to give me my feed based on my parameters.
Yeah. Yeah. So as the community activator, you would layer that, like, basically we're using reputation data to define algorithms for tools, as opposed to centralized algorithms. And so I imagine what you're talking about is a simple wants and needs tool or wants and needs app. And so I imagine like some of these very generic tools will be built in the marketplace. Maybe, it's something you commission, or maybe it's something another community is commissioned and you actually like it. And so you can actually draw down that code and share it with, and so the costs get split across the neighborhoods that use these generic tools. So there's not this replication of efforts. Just because you're a different community doesn't mean you need to have a separate wants and needs tool, even though you have different algorithms that define how people are
Hmm.
discovered within it. And and so we think like making tools generic will really drop down the cost of access for these tools. So potentially, like, some of these simple apps might take a few $1,000s to build, but maybe there's 50 communities, and in these 50 communities, there's, I don't know, 20,000 people using these tools, and so those 20,000 people will contribute towards the development of such a tool. And because of Holochain's micro accounting, we can actually go into those nominal numbers that each community or each individual member within the community would pay. And so my sense is in the early days of the marketplace, like, some of these very simple tools will be the first to appear. Like, I think every community will want wants and needs, a simple marketplace where people can express what they want to offer. And what's more interesting to me, and this is from my economics background, like, when I think about it, like, I think it will enable bazaar like commerce as compared to global market commerce. And global markets to me is basically all context is removed, and the only thing you're evaluating each other is on the basis of price, right? But I
Right.
might have I might have 100 limes in my backyard, and I might want to offer those 100 limes to 25 communities I'm part of. I might offer them in some communities as a gift. I might offer them in some communities at a 50% discount. I might offer them to some communities at market rate. But bazaar-led technology will allow this cross-membrane coordination to occur, which doesn't occur in today's exchange technology. Like, just to, for example, to trade one crypto across 5 exchanges, there's zero coordination. So you actually need to coordinate that yourself. In fact, there's a whole
Yeah.
business of arbitragers who profit because of this. So bazaar-like technology allows for this cross-membrane coordination, which for me is the perfect integration of community and economics. Like, that's, to
Yeah.
me, is super exciting, because I would like to offer my limes to certain communities or certain people within those communities, because like, I actually want to reward
Really
certain
hard to
behavior.
get limes here, man. Really hard. But you know what I really love about what you're saying is this
Mm,
modular approach, because
mm,
one of the things that I think is a pitfall is that we're saying we want a simple needs marketplace. And
mm,
then we got to compare with ourselves with Amazon. And I always talk about these boxers, like these
mm,
men's boxers that Amazon was telling me that I wanted because I had just gotten a new fireplace and I bought welder's gloves. And so
mm,
Amazon thought I was a guy.
mm.
And but it advertised like the ecological made from bamboo um,
Yeah.
shorts,
Mm,
which, and I found them quite attractive, necessary. But, and it knew. And we're saying we want a simple marketplace, but we're competing with that.
mm,
But if we were sharing these modules in the Neighborhoods network, and
mm,
somebody was really good at AI, somebody was saying, look, my module knows how to follow the behavior patterns of people who are trading in your market and replicate those patterns. I'd be like, oh yeah, I want that AI, and maybe you need that too. And so
mm.
now the cost of creating something that really is a very good matching tool and creates a feed, because we're trying to compete with
Yeah, yeah.
Amazon's feed. And now we can reduce the price, and I love that you're saying that. And then I can integrate with that my reputation data, because I can say, okay, well, now take the information from
Mm,
reputation and say, both what are the things I need? Okay, I need a packing plant or
mm,
a
mm,
food production plant
mm,
with my values and with the reputation data from
mm,
all of the plants within my vicinity. And
mm.
now I get matched with, I get a list of partners that are appropriate for my past behavior when I was selecting a partner.
Yeah,
And so, and we can't do that alone. I absolutely,
yeah. I agree.
we need these modules that we share, because otherwise we're trying to compete
Yeah.
with Amazon as individuals. And here it's like, okay, maybe that's not a $2,000 module, maybe that's $1 million module,
Mm.
but it's not $100 million module
Yeah,
if we're
yeah,
all sharing our
yeah,
modules together.
yeah. And probably, I think you'll also see, like, with this marketplace, we're also hoping to reach out to a specific kind of developer who likes to think in this particular way, right? Like, they can actually stitch
Mm-hmm.
together these modules that exist, like shared infrastructure that exists, stitch it together and release it in the marketplace, almost like a very self-entrepreneurial approach, as opposed to someone who wants to, be part of a much larger machine with
Yeah.
limited scope of work. So I do think you'll see some insane creativity unleashed with this kind of modular approach. Like, you might, like you said, like, see someone who's building these little AIs, and when you put it like that, like, AI seems like something we can harness in a very strong, positive manner. In a way in which it's in service to communities, as opposed to extractive for communities. um, and I think there's something very exciting about that. While I'm sure, like, there are some people who might watch this and roll their eyes and talk about, oh yes, the dream of, like, tech being easily accessible and modular, but I think we've actually witnessed that with something, something like DeFi over the last couple of years. As a former trader, like, I watch things like bot technology, arbitraging technology that's now been, unbundled and deconstructed and democratized but that's only happened at the monetary realm because that's what crypto is good at. But I
Mm-hmm.
think with holochain you're opening up all of these other dimensions, and so I actually think it's not that much of a leap because we've actually done that those modular architectures in one realm. We've shown how it can be monetarily efficient for everyone involved and actually works for everyone involved. And now it's just about replicating those models
Yeah.
across like some of these other dimensions, like reputation I think is one of them,
Mm-hmm.
and generic tools is another one. So I don't think it's
Yeah.
as much of a leap as maybe 3 years ago or 4 years ago. So I'm kind of excited
Yeah.
and positive about those
Yeah.
aspects. Um,
Yeah. I think so. And then you have things like source cred, which are like, okay, if you've contributed open source, which is what we're talking about,
mm,
then the ability to say, okay, we're going to,
mm,
as different apps use your neighborhood module, you're going to
mm,
be rewarded in
mm,
proportion to the usefulness of that module to other
yeah.
people. And that is already a model that's in place. And like you said, both with DAOs, but also with source cred and other
Mm,
types of models like that. We're starting to get used to this idea, oh, well, if I made an NFT and it
mm,
gets resold, I'm still getting credit for that. That's really what we're talking
mm,
about is like
mm,
you perform, there's no real significant difference between making a work of art and making a piece of code that's beautiful.
mm,
And
yeah.
if with every exchange in that piece of code that you would get rewarded in the same way that the NFT
Mm,
world is thinking about that now, or, a
mm,
recording artist. These aren't very, they're not necessarily revolutionary models.
mm,
We're just trying to make something that is taking our collective intelligence and,
mm,
you know, and
yeah.
sharing.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Um,
Cool.
Thank you, Pablo's been taking like writing out a little summary in our Discord
Oh,
thread that's dedicated to this. So that might actually be that might be great after a call to revisit. There's a whole bunch of questions in the thread. I don't
oh,
know how much time we have for them. I think we could take maybe Dave's question of what do you
I
think
mean,
about
I'm
between
flexible.
I think we just
Yeah,
do
but,
just let's just do this one
yeah.
question and then we wrap
Okay,
up. But
cool.
I guess that question is in your communities, how do you see that interaction or that interplay between virtual reputation versus in real life reputation?
Yeah. Um, I mean, I'm working in very real life type reputations, but I
Mm,
think that the answer is really this idea of different aspects, right? I could rate you on your behavior or on your promptness or on your delivery or ecological footprint.
mm,
So that's how I would think of it is like,
mm,
so that I feel like reputation has to be multidimensional in that way. It's
mm,
not just Sid's a good guy. It's like Sid is
mm,
good at
mm,
this.
mm.
And so that's how I think about it.
Yeah.
It's not like, and even if you think about hotel ratings or something simple, right?
Mm,
Like the restaurant ratings are still 1 to 5, but anytime you stay at a hotel, it's like cleanliness, proximity, location. It gives you at least 5 things to think about, and
mm,
that's really
yeah.
how your reputation is most useful that way.
Mm. I guess what's easy about virtual reputation is that it is generated virtually, as the name suggests, right? So
Hmm.
it's on the ledger. Whereas if we're talking about in-person data that's generated, like it actually there's that friction of whether or not it needs to be transformed into some kind of virtual ledger, and that can create some kind of bias within communities because then very naturally you have this richness of information in virtual ledgers, but
Yeah.
very sparse information from in-person things
Yeah.
like ecological footprint might end up being a function of like how you signal on virtual environments versus whether or not you're actually
Doing it.
like you
Yeah.
said using whether using plastic plates in person gatherings. So I guess
Yeah.
there's biases there, and honestly, like I think communities will course correct as we go. I guess we
Yeah.
will find like these biases exist and start adjusting for some of them, hopefully.
I want to add to
So,
that we talked a lot about this, about when you give the rating, right? So
mm-hmm,
let's say you provided me a service. Let's say you wrote code for me. Okay, here's a
mm,
digital service you provided for me, and it
mm,
was great and it worked. But
mm,
3 months later, it didn't scale, or it
mm,
had a security bug, and
mm,
so my reputation, your reputation with me might change a month or 2 months down the line, where it's like everything was as
mm,
delivered until you could think about that would happen with code, it would happen with plumbing,
mm,
it would happen with, right? So when did I rate you?
mm,
Is is really interesting. Like
mm,
at what point in time was that thing great delivery? And I don't have an answer for that.
mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'll just say, along with this neighborhoods infrastructure, there is an intention to create like some kind of intelligence network, like some kind of conversations and design efforts around the way reputation and culture could be architected. Um, I think that's like few months away, but there's definitely like proto conversations that are already underway, and I don't think we're thinking about it as like a centralized intelligent resource, but more just facilitating groups of people to get better at this as they go. And
Yeah.
I think it's an
And
interesting combination of like quantitative with qualitative bents of mind, which I personally find exciting. I think that's like a
yeah,
very interesting realm to be working in.
yeah. It
All right.
sounds incredibly relevant. This has been
Yeah.
exciting. I learned a lot,
Oh, thank you.
and I found out that this is actually something that could be useful for what I'm doing.
Mm,
And,
mm.
so I'm super excited, and I always love talking to you. It's
Always,
just,
yeah.
yeah, I
It's
always
never short
bends
of
my
excitement.
mind.
This might be one of the calmest conversations we've had though, and most agreeable ones. So I don't know. There might be something to worry about, but
It's because I'm more polite when I'm a guest on your channel.
um, very cool. Yeah, thank you. And I think for more community activators like yourself that are watching this, um, like I would say it's a few months away, but definitely start tuning into like what's being built, and we would welcome more questions and conversations about this. I'm gonna stop recording now, but I
Okay.
think what we can do is allow for people who are here, if they have any questions, to have some kind of informal conversation. Thank you, everyone.